It's Messi! It is the cleanest of clean finishes from the best on the planet.
It's time for the biggest sports stories.
Liverpool, the champions of Europe, on top of the world.
The biggest interviews.
That such a great spectacle is ruined by such thuggish behavior.
And all the analysis right here.
He's the one player that has the arrogance to think that he can play in any stadium in the world and any pitch in the world in front of any player in the world and take them on.
Every weekday, it's my sport, it's your sport. It's ZiFM Sport. Let's join the team for the biggest show in the world of sport on ZiFM Stereo. My station, your station.
It's a very good evening, Zimbabwe, and I say very good evening tongue in cheek because it's not a good day for football. Now, here's a quote for you. When you're on the pitch, life goes away. Problems go away. Everything goes away. That's the quote of Diego Armando Maradona, who breathed his last night, and we say goodbye to one of the best to ever do it. And slow motion images of his artistry carry immense poignancy, and we've seen them all over television stations across the world. This mythical player, surrounded by madness that bloated and blurred the boundaries between his professional career and chaotic personal life, was able to escape when he played. The noise faded, the claustrophobia lifted. Only now can we appreciate how much we should be thankful he found something blissful in those moments on the pitch, as well as the rest of us. ZiFM Sport today pays tribute to the best of all time, Diego Armando Maradona. To do so, Mike Madoda, Alois Bunjira, Mark Pozzo, our producer Sean Tafirinika. My name is Barry Manandi.
I'll never forget it. I wake up in the cold sweat thinking about it, tell you the truth.
To have that composure shows what a great player he is.
We haven't been able to control the play in midfield the way that Maradona has been able to do. And he's hurting England again here. It's a brilliant run. It's one of the World Cup great goals.
It's just a great goal. Sometimes you got to hold your hands up and say it's a great piece of work by a fine player, a great player.
Z.
Hi, I'm Clemens Matau, Chicanini midfielder. You're listening to ZiFM Sports.
Well, it's a good evening, boys, and in truth, we meet under very sad circumstances. I don't think any of us here met him personally, but we all felt that we lived through his life. And I think most of all, Mike, when I first met you and we became friends, one of the first things that you told me was that the man who made you love football was Diego Armando Maradona. Indeed, your first son was just about nearly named Diego if it wasn't for your wife.
Yeah, absolutely. That was vetoed, Barry. I really had intended to call him Diego Armando Madoda. And, you know, Maradona, quite close as you get, for an African, but the missus was having nothing to do with it. And, you know, the first times I really got into football, you know, when I was in primary school, that was Mexico 1986. And that was Maradona winning the World Cup with Argentina. Fantastic personal performance for him, and of course it is a performance that put him right up there in football folklore. And then 4 years later he followed it up. This time, of course, he wasn't able to go all the way at Italia 90, but he still led Argentina, La Alba Celeste, to the final, to lose out to West Germany 2-1 in that final. So he was the big star in world football at that time, and I was just starting to know football locally as well as internationally. I was starting to acquaint myself with the big stars of the game. You know, Pele was a previous generation, but there were the likes of John Barnes, Bruce Grobbelaar, Gary Lineker, the likes, of course, of Paolo Rossi from Italy, the likes, of course, of the legendary Lothar Matthäus of Germany, and players of that ilk. But the biggest name of them all was Diego Armando Maradona.
It certainly was, and you could add names like Marco van Basten, goal scorers of a higher ilk.
I knew you would throw him in because he's a favorite of yours, isn't he?
He certainly was a favorite of mine, but they couldn't even tie the shoelaces, and very many times those shoelaces needed tying. They couldn't tie the shoelaces of Diego Maradona. Now, Mark Pozzo, you're an English fan, hard and fast, right to the core, and always have been. And England, throughout the years, bore the brunt of some of Diego Maradona's genius, and I'm sure that didn't go down well with you.
Look, guys, nice to be on the show with you. Look, you can say in the history books, there's no argument that he will go down as one of the greatest players ever. Let's not forget he produced the pass that won the final against West Germany, and was perhaps at his best in that semi-final against Belgium, where he actually scored twice. But that quarter-final against England, still leaves a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth. But the defining moment, I think, in his life, the build-up to that game actually was quite interesting. It was made up of the war between the two countries in the Falkland Islands just 4 years earlier. From the Argentine point of view, the symbolism went really much deeper. 19th and early 20th century Argentina had been an informal part of the British Empire, and that introduction of football is a consequence of British influence. But the game arrived full of World War I prestige. It moved down the social scale and was reinterpreted by the locals, transformed into a more balletic sport ideal for the player with a low center of gravity, very true of the squat little Maradona. I mean, both goals were interpreted at home as acts of revenge from those who had been on the weaker end of a colonial relationship. The controversial first appeared as a message of they have the former power, but we are much smarter. And the glorious second was an irresistible claim that we are better. So you can certainly go down and say that English fans still have a bitter taste in their mouth, but at the same time, you can say that they recognized him, that he was a class act.
Absolutely. I mean, those two goals that Mark is referring to, of course, a 1986 World Cup, the Hand of God goal where the English chided Maradona, and then the second one where he beat nearly every single England player on the pitch to score a beautiful second, needed
incredible
applause. So mixed emotions for the English in that game. The man, and of course we got Alois Bunjira here as well, a man who then cut a career in professional football. And Alois, I've got to ask you the influence of this man, because the great thing is that all of us on the show today, barring of course our producer Sean, are from the generation of Diego Maradona. Did he have an influence in how and why you love the game, and indeed why you played the game?
Yeah, most definitely, Bay. You know, he's actually one person that I can actually say that he is the meaning of football to me. You know, when you talk about football, you are talking about Diego Maradona. I was just a little boy. You know, I think when I watched my first World Cup, I didn't know about Diego Maradona at that time. I only started knowing him in the 1982 World Cup. You know, and you know, before the matches, the camera would be on Diego Maradona before the match. So obviously, you know, the eyes will start like, who is this guy? And when the game starts, I was like, oh my God, this guy is brilliant. And that's when I was also starting my football career as well. Still, I'm under 8 and all that. So I started loving football through Diego Maradona. I'll tell you what, I was so disappointed when he was red carded. I think it was the game against Italy at that time. But then from there, you know, we used to have those newspaper cuttings that we used to paste in our books, you know, football pictures. So he was my first. You know, after the first match, I looked for the picture and he was my first. When I started my book, he was on the first page. So you can actually imagine what kind of influence he had on me. I started following him. Then came the 1986, like Mike said. You know, 1986 was just something else, guys. Let's be honest. I have never seen one footballer dominate a tournament all on his own. I was watching a movie about him about 35 minutes when he had the ball at the World Cup from game 1 to game last. And all the touches, I have no doubt. I have always heard people saying Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, and all the statistics. But when you watch the game, when you see what he was doing, the boots he was getting booted in every match. They were kicking him. Majaba. Game. They were flying all over, but he would just get up and go with the ball. He is the greatest for me. When I look all over it, he is the greatest, and it's disappointing that he has left us, but he defined football for me, and he had so much influence on me, and I've loved football. I've actually loved him all along through his transgressions, through his bad behavior about drugs and all that. Disappointing for him to get booted in the 1994 World Cup, but I cried with him in the 1990 World Cup. Mike said when they lost 1-0 to Germany, I cried with him. You could see the passion that he had for football. He was one passionate man, and he defined football for me, like I said before.
He certainly defined football. So there are 3 tributes for you. A young Madoda who was almost named Diego. We know what his nickname will be when he plays football. And then, of course, a trip down memory lane, a historical basis from an English fan's perspective from Mark Pozzo, and then Alois Bunjira, the inspirational element of Diego Maradona. Let's also hear a heartfelt tribute from Gary Lineker, who played with him. And it's about the one and only Diego Armando Maradona.
Having spent the time that I did with him, he's so revered, he's worshipped in Argentina. He constantly had a huge entourage around him. And I went to see a game, and I'll never forget it, see Boca Juniors play, and he had his own little box there, and I went with his family, and he's standing there, and the atmosphere was unbelievable at this game. And his family, one of his daughters was literally holding him, and he was screaming over the balcony, holding him so he wouldn't actually fall off. I mean, he had such an incredible passion for the game. I never thought in my lifetime that I would see anyone come remotely close to Diego in terms of ability with a football. I think we've seen Messi, who's very similar in many ways, obviously Argentinian, diminutive, brilliant left foot, but Diego was incredible. I actually played with him as well for half a game, played for the rest of the world, and at Wembley against, funnily enough, for the English League side, because it was a centenary. I played for the rest of the world because I was at Barcelona at the time. And all the players, there was people like Platini on the pitch, lots of great players from around the world, and everyone was totally in awe of him. First thing he did was in the dressing room, he sat there, just a pair of shorts, and like you roll your socks up. He just stood them, and he juggled them on his left foot. He just like that for about 5 minutes, and everyone was going, whoa. And then we went out on the pitch, and I don't think I'm tuned in. I think I can stand up and show you this. He did something that was incredible, one of the most unbelievable things I've ever seen on a football pitch. It might not sound that amazing to you at home, but I think you'll appreciate this. He juggled the ball all the way out to the centre circle, and then he got to the centre circle, still juggling it, and then he went bang, and he whacked it as high as he possibly could, and he waited. And it came down, and he went bang, and he did it again. And he did it 13 times, and the most he ever did was walk 3 paces to it. And all of us were sitting there going, oh my God, that's
like I was then.
That's impossible.
It is.
And I remember going to train the next day in Barcelona and stuff, and we all tried it, and the best anyone did was 3, and they were running for the 3rd one. And I've just never seen anyone have just such a beautiful affection with a football.
Gary Lineker himself, a fantastic footballer, talking there about the little genius that was Diego Maradona. Now, of course, he passed away tragically because of a heart attack. Now, Mike, when we look at it, but as soon as he was off the green grass, he was shrouded in controversy. And you could almost make a case to say that football almost did the best to him as well as the worst. Because of the glare that was on him, and also the injections he needed to take, because this man was being kicked from pillar to post, as Alois pointed out.
Yeah, Barry, but I think Maradona's demise, or should I say the beginning of his downward slide off the field, coincides with his time at Napoli, when he was in the city of Naples. You have to go back to that period, Barry, and realize that there was a very strong criminal culture in the city of Naples. There was a very strong criminal culture around football in Italy. Serie A was the biggest and the best and the most glorious league in world football at that time. Diego Maradona goes off to Naples and he leads Napoli to 2 league titles, vanquishing the likes of AC Milan, who were in their pomp at that time. And he also won a UEFA Cup. It's a testament to his greatness that Napoli have not been able to repeat either of the 2 feats until now. But what happened whilst he was at Napoli, because of his iconic status and his demigod-like status, his inner circle was infiltrated by a lot of criminal elements that introduced him to some bad habits. And I was watching an interview of his former agent who was speaking, and he was saying that Maradona's biggest weakness was that he was such a nice guy that he never filtered people or filtered voices out. So there were people constantly whispering in his ear, people constantly saying stuff to him, suggesting things to him, proposing things to him. And he never had the willpower, because he was a nice guy, to say no. And that is why he then had the links to the mafia and the underworld. He started substance abuse. And remember, in 1991, he was actually banned from football for when he was found to have had some cocaine in his bloodstream. So that's when it started in Napoli. So Napoli gave him European fame. It gave him the adulation. It gave him all that as a result of what he achieved on the field of play. But that is where, Barry, the bad habits that eventually led to his demise and his death, because his heart problems were as a result of substance abuse.
Yeah, and it cut his life short. I mean, listen, in between him going into hospital a few weeks ago and his demise, he was actually scheduled to go into a rehabilitation center for alcohol abuse. So he was still battling his demons, Mark. And in truth, this is a guy who, and there's the old adage that says genius has its vice. And it's absolutely, that statement is absolutely typified in the life of Diego Maradona. A genius on the field, but he had his vice of substance abuse.
Yeah, without the discipline of football, I think the second half of his life was a chaotic affair. His weight ballooned and he went through a number of much publicized health scares. I mean, he became an outspoken political figure at one stage, once linked with Argentina's military dictatorship, and then with the right-wing President Carlos Menem. He then moved to the left, becoming friends with Fidel Castro and tattooing himself with the image of Che Guevara. So, love him or hate him, he will go down as one of the greatest. But without the discipline of football, I'm afraid that's where it all went wrong for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was football that kept him away from everything. But football isn't necessarily 24/7, is it, Alois? So you've got to get back into society. And Mike, I think, giving us a great insight there in the sense that he didn't filter out voices, didn't filter out anybody. And so in with the good came also the bad. And the bad seemed to outweigh the good. You said you loved him through all of his scenarios and situations. And his time in Napoli was both brilliant, because remember, this was the time of an AC Milan side that was ruling the world, and Napoli broke that stranglehold. And then also the bad, whereby the underworld had access to him.
Yeah, Mike summed it up very well when he spoke about Naples and the criminal elements at Napoli. You know, he was the iconic figure there, and obviously that's what happens. You go anywhere in the world, you go to South Africa, you go to America, the underworld always look for those icons to penetrate, and we have seen it happening all over the world. So it's unfortunate that he couldn't be safeguarded. I also think probably the good people around him, I think they also didn't protect him as much as he couldn't protect himself. Sometimes when you get to that level, you need that kind of discipline to actually talk about your career, know where you are going, what you want to achieve in life, and try to dismiss all those
things.
Yes,
Alois, you know what his agent said? He said that we tried to put some sort of to ring fence this guy, but he was the problem with Diego is that he would go to the shops and come back with his car full of people. He would go training, hangers on, and he would come back with
you couldn't filter out people.
He could take a jog and you'd come back with 10 people running behind him.
It's like five.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for real. His life was like a movie. It was like a movie, and it's unfortunate that it ended up this way. But I can imagine. I think his head was damaged by the glare, by the attention that he was getting. Probably he didn't know how to handle. He didn't know how to deal with this kind of thing. And unfortunately, it ended up with his death. But all in all, like Mark said, he is the greatest. He will always be the greatest. Unfortunately, he couldn't handle the bad side of life, of which we thought it could have been better. You know, we've got Pele, who is different, who also had the same attention, I should say, but he managed to maneuver around this type of attention and all that. I wish that Maradona had managed to do the same, the way Pele did it.
Mike, we're running out of time, but I must get your thoughts on an element of his life that we all were willing him on, and it just didn't fire, and that's his coaching career.
His coaching career not as great as his playing career. In fact, not even close. He managed to get a number of jobs here and there in his native Argentina, as well as in Mexico. He managed to get some gigs, but it was mainly because he was Diego Maradona. So everyone was always willing to entertain the legend. Everyone was always willing to entertain the golden boy of Argentine football, but he was not a great manager, Barry. And I think this is epitomized at the World Cup 2010 in South Africa, where he came in with an Argentina side that many people tipped to be favorites for the tournament, a tournament that was eventually won by Spain, an Argentina side that was boasting the young talent of Lionel Messi, who was breaking out as the best player in the world at that time. But they capitulated, and I think they were knocked out in the quarterfinals of that tournament, and they underachieved. And many people felt that they underachieved as a result of Maradona's tactical inadequacy and deficiency. So great player, the greatest I've ever watched, to be honest, and I say that begrudgingly, mainly because he won a World Cup and Lionel Messi hasn't yet won one, but as a manager he was nowhere near that class.
Give me one sentence that defines Diego Maradona.
The hand of God. Two reasons, Barry, because the hand of God, in as much as we remember the infamy, which is he cheated, he scored with his hand, but people forget that Maradona was 5'5", and he showed incredible agility to actually leap above Peter Shilton, who was at least 30 or 40 centimeters taller than him, with his full reach, and he was able to get that in. So that
reach,
what Diego Maradona was all about. So there was brilliance in that moment of cheating. So he lived a very paradoxical life.
Mark, one sentence.
The hand of God. You've got to say that. I'll throw in something there now. Individual genius.
Right. Alois, your one sentence.
My one sentence, Barry, is the little genius from Argentina.
That could be Lionel Messi.
No. For me, I've said about it, Maradona. Lionel Messi came through, yes, he is close. But after watching, people, if you really want to compare, watch the clips. Don't look at the number of goals. Look at the play. Not the number of goals, the acceleration, the dash, the kicks, getting up, the marking, roughing up players, getting roughed up, everything he was just a full, complete package.
Well, that's our tribute to the legendary Diego Maradona. In fact, when you have greatness, your name becomes only one. And so we'll just say, fare thee well, Maradona. Here's our play of the day to wrap it all up. This is a track from 1986. It's called Querida Amiga. It's by Pimpinela and, of course, Diego Armando Maradona. Querida Amiga actually means dear friend. And so here on ZiFM Sport, we say, Diego Maradona, thanks for the memories. That's all we have time for. We'll catch you tomorrow for our weekend preview. May God richly bless you. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Manandi, out.